Karen Mitchell adjusted her laptop on the custom-built floating desk, savoring the gentle bob of the pool waves as she typed her quarterly report. The inflatable office pod, complete with a cup holder for her iced coffee and a waterproof extension cord snaking to the pool house, was her masterpiece. 3 weeks of remote work had never felt so luxurious. Karen, the shrill voice cut through her aquatic paradise like a rusty knife. Karen Mitchell. She looked up to see Gladys Pemberton, HOA president and neighborhood tyrant, standing at her pool gate with a clipboard pressed against her chest like armor. Behind Gladys stood 2 other board members, Meek Harold, with his measuring tape, and Patricia, who was already taking photos with her phone. Well, Karen called out, not bothering to paddle to the edge. The welcoming committee arrives. This is absolutely unacceptable. Gladys's face had turned the color of Karen's flamingo pool float. You cannot conduct business from your swimming pool. Watch me, Karen replied, deliberately clicking her mouse to send an email. I'm on a video call with Tokyo in 20 minutes. Should I tell them the fun police showed up? Harold nervously cleared his throat. Mrs. Mitchell, according to Section 4.7 of the HOA bylaws, no commercial activities are permitted in residential pools. Karen laughed, a sound that echoed off the water. Commercial activities? I'm an accountant working from home, Harold. My office just happens to float. Your office? Patricia interjected, still snapping photos, is a health and safety violation. What if you electrocute yourself? Then I'll die doing what I love, avoiding you people. Karen's fingers flew across the keyboard. Besides, everything's waterproof. I'm not an idiot. Gladys fumbled with her clipboard, her hands shaking with rage. You have 48 hours to remove this abomination, or we'll fine you. How much? Karen asked, genuinely curious. $500 for the first violation, doubling each subsequent offense. Karen's eyebrows shot up. She'd made more than that in billable hours just this morning. Gladys, darling, you might want to check your math. At my current rate, I can afford to keep this floating office running for quite a while. The 3 board members exchanged glances. They'd expected capitulation, not calculation. This isn't over, Gladys sputtered. I certainly hope not, Karen replied, opening her laptop's camera app. My Tokyo clients are going to love this story. As the trio stalked away, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just lit a very expensive fuse. But floating in her pool, watching the clouds drift overhead, she'd never felt more alive. Her phone buzzed. A text from her neighbor. Saw the confrontation. You're either brave or crazy. Maybe both. Karen smiled and typed back. Why not both? 3 weeks later, Karen floated in her pool office, reviewing the most surreal contract of her career. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was negotiating the purchase of the entire HOA management company from her inflatable desk. Karen, this is absolutely insane, Julie said through the speakerphone. You can't buy the HOA. I'm not buying the HOA, Karen corrected, highlighting a clause with her waterproof pen. I'm buying the management company that the HOA hired to enforce their rules. There's a difference. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind. Her YouTube channel had exploded to over 1 million subscribers. She'd licensed her floating office design to 3 different manufacturers. The floating office Karen merchandise line was generating more revenue than her accounting practice ever had. But the real coup de grace had come when Harold, of all people, had provided the crucial information. During a guilt-ridden confession at 2 a.m., he'd revealed that Gladys had been embezzling HOA funds for years, using the management company as a front. The forensic accounting was surprisingly straightforward. Karen explained to Julie. Gladys had been creative, but not careful. She owes the HOA approximately $400,000. And she's just giving you the company? She's transferring ownership to avoid criminal charges, Karen said. The homeowners voted unanimously to accept the deal. Amazing how quickly they turned on her when they realized she'd been stealing their money. Karen's doorbell rang. She could see Sarah from the corner house at the gate, holding a bottle of champagne. I have to go, she told Julie. The neighbors are throwing a celebration. Karen, Please tell me you have a plan for running an HOA management company. I do. Step 1. Dissolve 90% of the stupid rules. Step 2. Focus on actual community improvement instead of petty enforcement. Step 3. Install floating office options in the community pool. You're really doing this? I'm really doing this. Karen paddled to the pool's edge as more neighbors gathered. Besides, someone needs to show these people what reasonable looks like. After hanging up, Karen climbed out of the pool and walked to the gate. The crowd of neighbors had grown to include most of the street. They were all smiling, many holding drinks. Speech, speech, someone called out. Karen looked at the faces around her, people she'd lived near for 15 years, but had never really connected with. People who'd been just as frustrated with the HOA's tyranny as she had been. I'll keep this short, she said, accepting the champagne from Sarah. When I built my floating office, I was just trying to make work more enjoyable. I never intended to start a revolution. The crowd laughed. But sometimes revolution finds you, she continued. Sometimes you realize that the only way to fix a broken system is to take control of it yourself. She raised her champagne. To floating offices, to reasonable rules, and to the fact that sometimes the best way to beat them is to become them, but better. The crowd cheered and raised their glasses. As the celebration continued into the evening, Karen found herself back in her pool, laptop open, working on her new business plan. The floating office that had started as a simple comfort upgrade had become the foundation of her new empire. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You haven't heard the last of me. Gee. Karen smiled and typed back, looking forward to it. My office hours are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You know where to find me. She leaned back in her floating chair and looked up at the stars, wondering what other battles tomorrow might bring. But for the first time in years, she was excited to find out. The floating office bobbed gently in the pool, a small empire built on water and determination, ready for whatever came next. The fine arrived on official HOA letterhead exactly 48 hours later. Karen read it while floating in her pool office, now upgraded with a small refrigerator bobbing nearby and a waterproof speaker playing jazz. She'd even installed a tiny flag that read, SS Tax Haven. $500, she mused to her rubber duck, which she'd named Gladys Jr. That's adorable. Her phone rang. Karen Mitchell speaking. Karen, this is insane. Her sister Julie's voice crackled through the speaker. Mom called me. She says the whole neighborhood's talking about you. Good. I was getting tired of being the boring accountant. Karen pulled up her bank statements on her laptop. Did you know I've billed $18,000 since I started the floating office? My productivity's through the roof. That's not the point. You're starting a war with the HOA. They started it, Karen said, watching Harold creep along her fence line with his measuring tape. Harold, if you're going to spy on me, at least wave. Harold jumped, dropping his tape measure into the neighbor's bushes. You need to be reasonable, Julie continued. Reasonable got me nowhere for 15 years in this subdivision. Remember when they made me remove my vegetable garden because it wasn't aesthetically pleasing, or when they cited me for having the wrong shade of mailbox? Karen's voice grew harder. I've paid my dues literally, $73,000 in HOA fees over the years, and for what? Soap ladies can dictate the color of my shutters? But Karen, no buts. I'm done being reasonable. After hanging up, Karen opened her laptop and began typing. If they wanted a war, she'd give them one fought with spreadsheets and legal precedents. By afternoon, she'd researched 17 similar cases nationwide. Only 3 had resulted in HOA victories, and all involved actual safety violations. Her setup was safer than most home offices. She'd hired an electrician to install GFCI outlets and had the whole system inspected. Her doorbell rang. Through the window, she saw a man in a cheap suit holding a briefcase. Ms. Mitchell, I'm Gerald Hoffman, representing the Willowbrook HOA. I'd like to discuss a resolution. Karen gestured to her pool. My office hours are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You'll need to wade in. Gerald's eye twitched. I'm not getting in your pool, ma'am. Then I guess we don't have much to discuss. Karen started to close the door. Wait, Gerald's professional composure cracked. The board is prepared to offer a compromise. You can keep your workspace if you relocate it to your backyard patio. Counter offer, Karen said. The board can relocate themselves to the moon. Ms. Mitchell, you're being unreasonable. Am I? Or am I being the first person in this neighborhood to actually read the bylaws? Karen smiled sweetly. Tell Gladys I'll see her at the emergency board meeting Thursday. I'll be the one taking notes on waterproof paper. Gerald's face went pale. How did you? Harold's wife works at the coffee shop. She's very chatty. Karen's smile widened. See you Thursday, Gerald. Bring your swimming trunks. The Willowbrook Community Center had never seen a crowd like this. Karen arrived fashionably late, wearing a business suit and carrying a pool noodle under her arm like a briefcase. The room buzzed with nervous energy as neighbors whispered and pointed. She's lost her mind, muttered Mrs. Chen from Lot 47. I think she's brilliant, countered young Sarah from the corner house. Wish I'd thought of it. Gladys called the meeting to order with enough force to crack her gavel. We're here to address the unauthorized commercial operation being conducted in violation of our community standards. Karen stood up. Point of order, ladies. I'd like to present evidence that my floating office is not only legal but beneficial to our community. You don't have the floor. Actually, I do. Karen pulled out a thick folder. According to Robert's Rules of Order, which our bylaws specifically reference, any resident may present relevant evidence during discussion of violations. The room fell silent. Harold looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Furthermore, Karen continued, I've discovered some interesting discrepancies in how bylaws have been enforced over the years. She opened her folder. Tom Henderson's above-ground pool has been operational for 3 years without a permit. The Johnson's fence exceeds height restrictions by 6 inches. And ladies, your decorative fountain requires a water feature permit that you've never obtained. Gladys's face went from red to purple. This is not about other residents, isn't it? Karen pulled out printed emails. Because I have 17 complaints filed against various residents over the past 5 years. Guess how many were selectively enforced? She didn't wait for an answer. 73% were dismissed without action. The other 27%? All filed against residents who'd previously questioned board decisions. The crowd began murmuring. Karen had their attention now. My floating office generates zero noise, produces no odors, and actually increases property values by demonstrating the innovative spirit of our community. I've received inquiries from 3 real estate agents asking about showing my setup to prospective buyers. Patricia stood up. This is ridiculous. You can't just. Can't what? Work from home. Use my property as I see fit within legal bounds? Karen's voice rose. I've had my electrical setup inspected by a licensed electrician. I've researched zoning laws. I've consulted with 3 attorneys. The room went dead quiet. That's right, Karen continued. 3 attorneys, all of whom agree that my setup violates no laws, no safety codes, and actually falls within the definition of reasonable personal enjoyment, as defined by state statute. Gladys fumbled with her papers. The board reserves the right to. The board reserves the right to enforce bylaws fairly and equally, Karen interrupted, something that hasn't happened in years. She pulled out her phone and held it up. I've been documenting everything. Photos, emails, selective enforcement patterns. My YouTube channel, Floating Office Adventures, has 43,000 subscribers as of this morning. The room erupted. Neighbors were pulling out their phones, some laughing, others arguing. Harold was frantically whispering to Gladys. Quiet. Gladys slammed her gavel repeatedly. The board will deliberate and render a decision. The board will follow its own bylaws, Karen said firmly, or find itself facing a lawsuit for harassment and selective enforcement. She gathered her papers and stood to leave. I'll be in my office tomorrow from 9 to 5. Any board member who wants to discuss this professionally is welcome to schedule an appointment. As she walked toward the door, Sarah from the corner house called out to Karen, Can you help me design a floating office? I offer consulting services. Karen replied without turning around. Check my website. The room exploded into chatter as Karen left, her pool noodle held high like a victory flag. Karen's phone hadn't stopped ringing since the YouTube video of her board meeting showdown went viral. Floating office Karen destroys HOA Karen had garnered 3 million views in 48 hours, spawning countless reaction videos and memes. Good morning, this is Karen Mitchell's floating office, she answered, balancing her phone while typing on her waterproof keyboard. Ms. Mitchell, this is Sarah Chen from Channel 7 News. We'd love to do a feature. I'm booked solid until Friday, Karen interrupted. Check my website for media inquiries. She hung up and immediately answered another call. Karen Mitchell's floating office. Karen, it's Julie. What have you done? I've revolutionized the concept of the home office, Karen replied, watching a news van pull up outside her house. Also, I've accidentally become an entrepreneur. I've had 67 inquiries about floating office consultations this week. This is insane. Mom's friends are calling her asking if you've had a breakdown. Tell Mom I've had a breakthrough, not a breakdown. Karen waved at the news crew setting up on her lawn. I'm making more money than I ever have, and I'm finally happy at work. The doorbell rang. Through her pool gate, she could see ladies approaching with what appeared to be a process server. Julie, I have to go. The enemy approaches. Karen, please don't do anything. Reasonable. That ship has sailed. Karen hung up and paddled to the pool's edge. Morning, ladies. I see you brought reinforcements. Ms. Mitchell, the process server said, you're being served with a cease and desist order. Karen accepted the papers, her feet dangling in the pool. Ooh, fancy legal letterhead. Let me guess. You're demanding I remove my floating office within 24 hours or face legal action. That's correct, Glady said smugly. The board voted unanimously. Unanimously. Karen raised an eyebrow. That's interesting, because Harold called me yesterday asking if I'd help him design a floating workshop for his woodworking hobby. Harold, who'd been hiding behind the news van, turned bright red. Furthermore, Karen continued, scanning the document, this cease and desist order is improperly executed. It should have been served by certified mail or by a licensed process server. Jerry here. She gestured to the nervous man in the suit, works at the copy shop. I recognize him from when he made my waterproof business cards. Jerry's face went ashen. Glady said. Glady said what? That she'd pay you $50 to play dress up. Karen laughed. This document is legally meaningless. The Channel 7 news crew had moved closer, their camera rolling. Karen noticed and her smile widened. Since we're all here, she announced loudly, I'd like to make a statement. The Willowbrook HOA board is attempting to silence a small business owner who's committed no crime, violated no safety codes, and actually improved property values in the neighborhood. She gestured to her setup. My floating office represents innovation, entrepreneurship, and the American dream. If they want to shut me down, they'll have to do it legally. Turn that camera off, Glady shrieked at the news crew. Public street, public statement, the reporter replied. First Amendment. Karen climbed out of the pool, water dripping from her business suit. I'm filing a countersuit against the HOA for harassment, attempting to serve fraudulent legal documents, and interfering with my legitimate business operations. You can't do that. Glady sputtered. Watch me. Karen pulled out her phone. Speed dial 3. My attorney's office. He's been waiting for this call. As she dialed, neighbors began gathering on the street. Some were holding signs. Support floating office Karen, and innovation over intimidation. This is far from over, Glady's hissed. I agree completely, Karen replied, her phone ringing. But next time, come prepared for a real fight. The news crew captured every word.